Hey, what's going on? My name is Michael and you guys are watching IDB. In this video, I want to talk about my Apple Watch Ultra. After using it for over 200 days since it first came out, I've had a lot of time to gather my thoughts on this Apple Watch. And in this video, I want to share 3 positives and 3 negatives about using the Apple Watch Ultra. So let's go ahead, roll the intro and jump right in. I want to start with the positives, and the first positive about the Apple Watch Ultra after using it for a long time is the battery life. This Apple Watch completely changes the way I charge my smartwatch now, because the previous watch I had was the Series 7, and that watch I had to charge pretty much every single night if I wanted to get a full day of use out of it the next day. However, with the Apple Watch Ultra, even if I forget to charge the watch at the end of the day, I know I'm still able to get another full day. So it's really nice that if I'm away from my charger, I still know I can get a full day out of it the next time I want to use it. You can see here it is 4 p.m. and I charged it last night as I was in the shower, and I also put it on for sleep tracking and my alarm. So here I'm almost a full day into using it. I've tracked my workouts, I've used the GPS, I've used Apple Pay, I've streamed to my AirPods, and I'm at 70%. So the battery life on this thing is fantastic, and if you really stretch your usage, I'd say you could get this to about 2.5 days, which is fantastic for how many features you get in the Apple Watch Ultra. So if I open up settings here, I want to show you what my battery health is because I was pretty surprised. If I click on battery, I'll click on battery health. You can see that my battery health somehow is still at 100%. But if you have seen some of my other videos, you know that this is not true. This is just relating to the rated capacity of the Apple Watch Ultra. The actual capacity that the watch shipped with obviously is still not the same. But for the Apple Watch to still be at least the rated capacity that it's supposed to ship from the factory is very impressive. And I really haven't noticed my battery life changing at all since I've used it. I'd say once I start using it for a few years, I'd say maybe 2-3 years down the line, I'd probably notice the battery life getting a little bit worse. But with the battery being so good already on the Ultra, I'd say it really isn't anything to worry about. Adding on top of this, we also have low power mode. So I sometimes use this when my watch is really dead. There was a situation where I was away from my charger for 2 nights, and as soon as my watch reached around 15% or 10%, that is when I switched on low power mode. And this limits some of the background activities. It turns off some of the features on the Apple Watch in order to greatly extend your battery life. So it is nice that you do have this feature if you need it, but the battery life on the Ultra is fantastic, and it's probably one of the best selling features of this watch. Positive number 2 is durability. This Apple Watch is literally a tank, and you can tell it's built like a tank. I have slammed this thing into door frames, I've slammed it into my granite kitchen countertop, I've bashed it into various gym equipment and squat racks when I'm working out, and this thing just refuses to break, let alone show any signs of damage. And I think that is due to, in part, the titanium body and also the composite sapphire material display. I say it's a composite material because everyone knows that these displays aren't 100% pure sapphire like some other watches, but Apple does have some traces of sapphire in this display, and you can definitely tell because whenever you bash this thing up against anything, it doesn't show scratches at all. And the screen also stays more protected and scratch-free because it isn't raised above the bezel. When you compare it to all the previous Apple Watches, and especially the newer Apple Watches like the Series 7 and Series 8, the screen curves around the edges. So it is way more likely that you'll bash it into something and get a scratch on the edge of the screen, and if you drop it face down, the glass is going to be more exposed. But here, the titanium lip on the Apple Watch is very slightly raised above the glass. So if you put this face down on a table or if you bash it into anything, it's going to be the titanium edge that takes all the damage instead of the screen. However, if the screen does end up making contact with something because of the materials in the glass, it is very unlikely it's going to get damaged as well. I really love the titanium build of this Apple Watch Ultra. I think this is my favorite material for a casing that Apple has ever used. It looks very similar to aluminum. The texture feels a little bit different, and I really like how it reflects light. You can tell, like when I move it in the light here, you can see just on the bezels, you don't get that sort of refraction with aluminum. So titanium is just a really, really high-end material, and it's not as heavy as stainless steel also, and it's also also insanely durable, as you've heard me mention in this video. I have slammed this thing up against so many different objects that I am just shocked my titanium is still in perfect condition. So I am very impressed with the build quality of the Ultra. And for positive number 3, it is the additional button. This is the action button. I have it set up so when I click it one time, it launches into my workout app. Now, I previously had this mapped to start a traditional strength training workout, but recently I've been trying a bunch of different workouts, and this isn't the primary workout I do now. Sometimes I'm doing walks or cycles or functional strength training or indoor runs. So now I just have it mapped to open the workout app, which I find works a lot better for me. If we go ahead and jump into settings and find our settings for the action button, I'll show you what you can change. So if we click on here, you can see we have an action. Now you can choose to open the workout app. You can have it start a stopwatch. You can have it mark a waypoint in Maps. You can start a backtrack in Maps. You can have it launch the dive application or a flashlight, and also a custom shortcut that you can set up on your iPhone. I think if I wasn't to use the workout shortcut, I would probably either use the flashlight one or the stopwatch. Those would be the most useful for me. Having a third button on the Apple Watch is so much more useful because there really is only so much that you can do with the digital crown and the side button. So having this additional action button to do anything you want is really nice. I would like the option to have it open any app you want. Like, for example, why can't I set it to open up the calculator if I wanted to? That would be really nice because there are some apps on the Apple Watch that other people use as well, other than the ones that Apple has programmed in settings. And in a future model of the Ultra, or even a future software update for this watch, I'd really like the option to either double tap or triple tap the action button to get even more shortcuts. Another thing I like doing that involves the action button is when I'm in a workout. If I want to pause my workout, I can simply press and hold the side button and the action button at the exact same time in order to pause it. This is a lot easier than what I had to do on my previous Apple Watch, which was press the crown and the side button at the same time. You kind of had to put your fingers together in this awkward way. But here, now that the buttons are on both sides, all you have to do is click it like this in order to pause or resume your workout. And just a very small note I want to make, in future models of the Apple Watch Ultra, I think it would be really cool if Apple could have the Apple Watch Studio, which they already have, but have an option to change the color of the action button. I don't think orange is for everybody. Personally, I do like the way the orange looks on the button and also on the crown, but I think a lot of people would like a toned down color, just like a silver or a gray. And I also think people would like maybe a fun color like a red or maybe even a really bright green. So that's something Apple could consider in the future if they want to give more customization options to the Apple Watch. Maybe it would just be an online only exclusive. You could change the color of the action button. I think that would be a really cool idea. So those were my 3 positives. I do have a few other ones I want to mention in here that I just have labeled as miscellaneous. The first one is the microphones are way better on the Ultra, and that is simply because there just are more microphones. You have one on this side and on this corner, and you also have a microphone on this side as well. You can see we also have another one on this corner. So there are so many microphones on this Ultra, and whenever I'm talking to someone on the phone, they can't tell that I'm using my watch, which is pretty cool. And the same thing goes for the speaker. The speaker on the Ultra, obviously because the body is a lot larger than any other Apple Watch we've had, the speaker is very loud, and when I'm on the phone with somebody, I don't even have to raise my wrist anymore because the speaker is that good. And the final positive I want to mention here to wrap it up is how bright the screen is. There literally is no scenario I can put this Apple Watch in where it is not visible. I could be out at a beach on the sunniest day of the year and I would still be able to see everything on the screen perfectly. I believe it goes up to 2000 nits just as the iPhone 14 Pro can, and this screen honestly looks like a sticker sitting on top of the glass. I've said that about my iPhone 14 Pro before, but when a screen gets this bright, it is visible no matter what situation you put it in. And now I want to discuss the negatives. The first negative about the Apple Watch Ultra for me is it's simply too bulky for my taste. I feel like the original design Apple Watch fits way more situations. When I'm in the gym, I think the Ultra is perfect for my look at the time. I think the bulky, sporty look looks really nice when I'm working out. However, I'm only in the gym for an hour or an hour and a half out of the day. And then if this is the only Apple Watch I have to walk around with this gigantic, bulky Apple Watch on my wrist. And honestly, I feel like just the normal design of the Series 7 or Series 8 would look a lot better on my wrist in most day-to-day situations. It definitely stands out on your wrist a lot more. As you can tell, this thing is pretty bulky on my skinny wrists. It's also a lot harder to match an outfit with it because, as I mentioned, we have these orange accents on the crown and also on the action button. And also, it is harder to find matching bands because Apple doesn't sell as many bands for the Ultra as they do for the normal Apple Watch models. And also, I've noticed that when I wear a shirt that has long sleeves, because of how thick the body is on the Ultra, I sometimes notice that it is hard to get the sleeve to go over the body of the watch just because of how thick it is, as you can see there on my skinny wrists. So again, this goes back to it just being hard to wear in various scenarios. I know that this watch is marketed at people that are into sports and high intensity fitness and stuff like that. However, most people only own one Apple Watch. So it's important to keep in mind that if this is the one Apple Watch you are buying, just keep in mind that it is going to be quite big in most situations. It's going to work for you when you are working out or doing those active things, but when you're just living your day-to-day life, it can sometimes get in your way and be a little bit obtrusive. The second negative thing I want to mention is usability, comfort, and the bezels. First up is simply swiping on the Ultra is not as comfortable, you could say, as it is on any of the previous Apple Watch models. And that's because of the design of the Apple Watch Ultra, which I've mentioned in this video. Because the bezel is raised above the screen, it's obviously not going to be as comfortable on your finger whenever you're swiping into notifications or swiping up to Control Center or even going in between your watch faces. When I'm using my Series 7 or Series 8, because the glass curves around the edges of those Apple Watches, it feels so smooth it almost feels like a perfect pebble sitting on your watch that you can glide your finger across. However, when I'm using my Ultra, it feels really sharp, like it's cutting into my finger whenever I try to swipe. Another point I want to mention is Apple says this is the biggest screen ever on an Apple Watch, but if you look at the specs on their website, it is only bigger by like a few millimeters. With how big and bulky this Apple Watch is, I honestly would have expected a bigger screen, not just by a few millimeters. And you can also see that this is because of how thick the bezel is. Now, I do believe the bezel is the same size as on the Series 7 and Series 8, but it is sort of an illusion because those Apple Watches have a curved display around the edges. So it does make it look a lot more futuristic and it makes it look like the screen is flowing edge to edge. But because we have a flat display on the Ultra, the bezels appear a lot thicker. And the final negative I want to mention about the Ultra is the digital crown. I honestly believe that the digital crown is not as good as any of the other Apple Watch models. First up is when you turn it, it just doesn't feel nearly as satisfying. I don't know what it is, but compared to my Series 7 and Series 8, whenever I turn the crown on those watches, it feels a lot more, I guess you could say, oiled up and smooth. But here on the Ultra, it just feels a little bit more sticky and you really don't feel like you can turn it as well as you can on the other watches. You can also tell because of the crown guard that the digital crown doesn't stick out as much. And the crown itself is a lot bigger. And this can also be annoying because when I have it on my wrist, sometimes the crown sticks onto the skin of my wrist. And this may be slightly my fault because I wear the watch a little bit too tight. But sometimes when I'm trying to use the crown on my wrist, I can't turn it because it's being stuck to my skin. And that's an issue I never had with any other Apple Watches. I guess because the crown is a lot bigger on this watch and Apple wants to go for that big durability look and feel, sometimes it can get in the way though with how big the crown is. And one more point I want to mention about the crown, on top of it not being as satisfying to turn, it also doesn't click nearly as much as any of my other Apple Watches. In fact, when I switch from my Ultra to my Series 7, I'm almost blown away at how much click I get when I use the digital crown. And then when I go back to the Ultra, it almost feels like I'm not clicking anything at all. Again, that may be because of how Apple built the Ultra, and that may be on purpose because they want that durability to be there, and the less moving parts, the better it is for durability. But just in terms of using it every single day, people want that satisfying click when they use the hardware and when they use the buttons on their devices, and you definitely don't get that as much on the Ultra. The crown, of course, still works the way you would expect on an Apple Watch, however, it's not as tactile as some of the other models. And one more thing I want to mention, I do have this listed under the negatives part of this review, and it is price. But after thinking about it, what you get for this Apple Watch in terms of value, it honestly is quite a lot. If you want a cellular Apple Watch with a higher end case material, you're gonna be paying around $750 no matter what. So if you just pay $50 more to get up to that $799 price point of the Apple Watch Ultra, you get so much more watch for your money. And if you're able to put up with some of the negatives I listed in this video, such as how bulky it is and some of the usability quirks that this watch has, I'd say it definitely is a pretty good value for your money. Now again, value is subjective person by person. Some people may think that $799 is absurd to spend on an Apple Watch when you can go ahead and get an Apple Watch SE, which pretty much does the same thing. And some people may think that $799 is an insane deal when you compare it to, for example, the stainless steel Apple Watch, which doesn't give you the same battery life or case materials. So again, value is completely subjective. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on how the Apple Watch Ultra is priced. So if I can summarize the Apple Watch Ultra in one sentence, I would say the Apple Watch Ultra is a souped up, rugged version of a normal Apple Watch with double the battery life. If that's something that appeals to you, I definitely recommend checking it out. But again, you should think about some of the positives and negatives I mentioned in this video. If you guys have an Apple Watch right now, let us know in the comments which model you have. I am kind of curious what the majority of you guys are rocking on your wrist every single day. And if you guys found this video informative or helpful, please give us a like as well. My name is Michael with IDB. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.